This week's episode is a re-release of one of our most impactful conversations with therapist Letisha Miller. In this episode, she helped us break down the real-life challenges so many of us face and offer clear, compassionate guidance that truly resonated with listeners. And if you loved that episode the first time around, get ready, because part 2 is coming next week. This time, Letisha will be answering your questions directly. If you have something on your heart or a situation you'd love her perspective on, send it to hello@brandylewis.com. That's HELLO@BRANDILEWIS.com. Now, let's revisit that powerful conversation and get ready for what's coming next.
Do you ever think about how a therapist could help you see a life problem differently? On today's episode, we have a pre-licensed therapist, Letisha Harris Miller, who helps us understand trauma and seeking therapy from a therapist's perspective. Letisha explains that her passion for therapy comes not only from her own life journey, but also from wanting to help others better themselves.
I believe that people can find and discover who they are at whatever stage and whatever age of their life. It never stops. Healing process never stops. You never get 100% healed, right? But you can discover who you are, and you can live in that authentic self at any age and at any stage of your life.
On this episode, we will learn about the benefits of therapy, the impacts of triggers and trauma, how it affects others if unhealed, and most importantly, how to know when you need to seek out help. You don't want to miss this episode, as there is something for everyone to learn. I took away so many great nuggets myself from our conversation. I enjoyed this episode so much that Letisha will be back in the next couple of months to answer listeners' questions. If you have a question you'd like answered, we will anonymously ask Letisha for her advice. You can email your questions to hello@brandylewis.com. That's HELLO@BRANDILEWIS.com. Now, let's learn. Welcome to The Life We're Given. I'm your host, Brandy. This is the podcast where honest conversations fuel you to keep moving forward in life, no matter what may stand in your way.
Healing from my teenager self, the one who dreamt of what a relationship would be.
Yeah, my doctor just called. She says I needed to go get a blood transfusion. I don't really know what that means, what that looks like. I've never had one before.
We talk about the hard moments in life.
Do I matter? Do I matter to you? And so I'd always had that question of identity from a parent figure.
Hearing resilient stories from others will help you know that you are not alone.
It's so nice. I feel like we can relate.
Thank you so much for joining me, Letisha. I'm so excited to have you here. I know that you are a licensed therapist and you have some really good information to bring on this podcast as well. Up until this time, we've had a lot of conversations with different guests that have just battled and been through some really hard times in their lives, but they've been able to tell us resilient stories. But I think it would be great to have a therapist on as well, so we can talk about those mental health struggles, how people can get over that. And we'll talk about a few other things as well. So I'm so excited to have you on.
Yes, I just want to correct you. I am a pre-licensed therapist. So I'm
a pre-licensed therapist.
Yes.
Okay.
So I am in my path to getting my license. So I should get it by next year. Yes, I work for Ellie Mental Health, and I've been with Ellie for about 4 years. I just have a lot of experience working with people in their traumas, people in their life journeys. And so that is one of the focal points of my therapy journey. Having experienced a lot of trauma in my own life, having had a lot of family members experience trauma, and then just being able to witness trauma like as a societal issue and concern. I've always had a passion for helping people better understand themselves and better understand life. So that's awesome. Part of my journey and my history.
That's so cool. I love hearing that. It sounds like you've kind of made lemons out of lemonade of your own battles and dealings with trauma. And now you're able to help so many other people. That's so awesome. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll just jump into it. I know me and you've talked earlier, getting ready and preparing for this podcast, but we've talked a lot about mental health and the struggles around mental health. So we'll start with the stigmas of mental health. So why do you think there's such a stigma around that word mental health? And how can we move past that stigma?
Mental health is the biggest stigma around mental health is the definition of it. So people really define mental health as a person that is crazy, or a person that is off of a level of medication, or a person that doesn't have their stability in mental health. And that's just not the facts. The facts are is that we all deal with mental health. How we adjust it, how we manage it, and how we grow in it really determines whether we seek a therapist or not. So when you think about your own mental health, or think about your own journey to remaining stable or to remaining sane, right? There are things that you may do. There's certain norms that you may have that if those get out of whack, you may seek some guidance from someone else. And how we look at the guidance that we receive, I think, especially in the African American community, we do seek out services and helps for our mental health. It just doesn't look like a therapist. So it may be like your girlfriends, and your girlfriends come and let you vent, right? That's a mental health avenue, right? Or it may be your pastor or your family members, right? You're seeking out mental health services. It just doesn't look like a therapist. And I think people really put a stigma on what mental health looks like and what it looks like based off some society's idea of it. And we all deal with mental health. We all have mental health. It's part of our makeup. It's part of our DNA. But how we handle it and how we manage it really determines whether or not we seek out or need to seek out therapy. Because not every experience that we have in life requires a therapist. But there are some experiences that we go through in life that a therapist could help to even just change your perspective about it, or open up some things that you might have locked away or you might not even know are there. And so having a third party who isn't privy to you or have a perception of you as a person, they can help you really navigate through those experiences or those traumas that you may have had in your life.
Yeah, I'd say with a therapist, for me, I've seen a therapist more than one over times of my life, and I love the perspective of having a therapist that is neutral, that doesn't know anybody else, that doesn't know the situation. And like you said, comes from that expert opinion of helping you through that road. That's what I love the most about having a therapist. It's just, they're just a neutral party. And that's helped a lot. But I've never thought about, you're right. You may not need to seek out a therapist in every area of your life, but you're seeking out somebody.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that, but you're right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just something that you subconsciously do. But you're right. I when you were talking, I could think of the people like my mom and people at church and people that I've seeked out for different areas of my life too.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting perspective.
That's exactly what our mental health is. We are in a situation or in a life experience that may be too big for us, right? Or we don't really know where to go or how to manage it, right? A lot of people will seek out a life coach before they seek out a therapist, right? Because a life coach will kind of set you on the path and give you tools and skills to help you manage whatever it is that you're trying to get through or get out of, or whatever thing you're trying to set up in your life. And a therapist does very similar. But a therapist gets into some of those past experiences that you've had in life, or some of those past pains and hurts that you have in your life that you may not even realize are there, or they may be shaping how you're viewing life today, and you may not be aware of it. And some people aren't ready to experience that. And then there are people who are. And so it really is just a huge stigma about what mental health looks like and how we view it and how impactful it truly is in our lives. And people really think that it's for the crazy, for the people that are, and that, it's for them too. It's not just for, but it is also for people who just really want to heal who want to get rid of some of the pains that they've had or some of the experiences that they've had, or are experiencing a very traumatic situation or life experience. And it's not something that's a lifelong journey, right? Like therapy can be for a couple of months. Therapy can be for a couple of years. It doesn't necessarily have to be forever, right? And so I think that's a huge stigma. Like now I'm stuck with this mental health, you know, like I've been to a therapist. Now I'm stuck with, I need help, right? And it's not that. It's like you need that guidance through this thing, through this journey or this stage of your life. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that needs to be talked about too, is like you said, you don't have to have a therapist forever. I mean, I've seen more than one therapist at different times of my life, but you know, one was for a year, one was for a couple of months, and it was for different things that was going on in my life. And I always talk about this, like I was diagnosed with 2 rare blood disorders. And so I've dealt with that kind of trauma, health issues in my life and the mental struggles that go with that. But I remember when I saw a therapist, and I was just telling her kind of like about my background of health and kind of where I was. And she asked me, she was like, have you ever gone to therapy? And I was like, you know what? I never went to therapy for that. And I think it was because I was so busy at the time, just trying to get better. I was trying to survive. Every day was a day of survival, that the last thing on my mind was, you need to go see a therapist. But I felt like I was finally in the frame of mind to do that. And for me, it helped. It helped a lot to kind of close that chapter on my health and the mental struggles that went on, and not letting that, you know, keep going on in my life. So I love that perspective that you brought to it.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I think a lot of people, when they talk about seeking help or looking for a therapist, they see it as a sign of weakness. What do you say to people that, you know, may be thinking of it as, I don't want to seem weak, so I don't want to seek out a therapist? Like, how do you reframe people's mind in thinking about that?
When I talk to people about mental health or about therapy, I really give them a different perspective about what weakness looks like, because oftentimes we think weakness is like needing help. For many women alone, asking for help is very difficult. Yeah. Especially if you're a mom or you're a wife or you're, you know, a significant other, or you're a corporate person, you know, or you have a higher position in a job. Like, it is really difficult to ask for help, because it's like a sign of like the damsel in distress, right? And I always try to tell people that when you think about mental health, it's not so much that you're a weak person. Just like I tell people when they cry, right? It doesn't make you weak. It's a cleansing of your soul. So when you think about mental health and needing to get that service, you're cleansing out your soul, right? Which makes you stronger. It makes the lens and the path that you're going on stronger, because you're aware of the things that you have challenges in, and you're aware of how to handle those challenges, right? Because if I'm focused only on the pain and the situations and the challenges that I have, then I'm weak to everything else, right? I'm not able to be solid in my job. I'm not able to be committed 100% to my spouse or my significant other or my family members or friends. I'm not able to be a 100% dedicated mother to my children, because there's something else that I'm focused on, right? And my mental health is a piece of that. If I'm not working on that aspect of my life, then there are weaknesses everywhere else. So although we may feel like we're very strong in that mental health piece, right? Because you're not seeing a therapist and you're figuring it out for yourself, everything else is kind of going by the wayside, and everything else you're not at 100% or even 90 or 85 or 70%, because you're focused on whatever that is, and trying to survive and trying to maintain stability, and being able to have a therapist, somebody that you can kind of put that stuff out on, right? Talk about that stuff and let that stuff out. Then you release that pressure and that tension that is attached to that. And then you can be able to dedicate more of your energy, more of your mind, more of your spirit to your family, friends, work, whatever that looks like. And if you can do that, right, you have an outlet for the pain, right? It doesn't go out onto everybody else and everything else, right? It doesn't bleed out to that because you have an outlet for it. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think about it as a weakness. I think about it as a strength, as an opportunity for you to release some of the things that some of the things that are putting pressure on you so that those things don't leak out onto everybody else. And I also think about the fact that nobody has to know.
True.
Right. Just like you go to the nail appointment, or you go to the hair appointment, or you go to the doctor, right? When you need to get a physical, you go and do all of those things. And nobody really knows until you show them or until you tell them. Right. The same thing with a therapist. You can go to a therapist appointment and nobody will know that you see a therapist until you tell them. And so it's about what you find valuable for you. What things do you want to do? What things do you want to focus on and be better at and be strong in? And if it's family, friends, work, all of those things, you want all those things to flourish, and you still are holding on to some of the pains or experiences or life happenings or traumas or whatever, and those are guiding your relationships, you're always going to have a little bit of that leakage, and those people aren't going to be getting your full authentic self.
Wow. You said so many great points in that. Just knowing, like, and I've seen that in my life and just in relationships with other people, is when you're not operating at 100%, when you're in a relationship, I mean, just a friendship, any type of relationship, that person sees that and can feel that. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. And it leaks over into whatever it is you're trying to give that attention to that you really fully can't because of what you're going through. Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome to know and just awesome to hear. But I also love that you said that nobody has to know.
No, that's right.
It is, you really control who you tell if you want, and you control if you don't want to tell them. That is all under your control. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that hits so heavy, hearing somebody else say that, somebody that's in this space, to say that you don't have to tell anybody.
You don't.
There's no pressure around it because nobody has to know. It's all in your hands. Yeah.
Yep. You don't go around telling people you went to the doctor for a physical. You know what I mean? Like, you don't.
Yeah, you don't
scream that from the rooftop. You don't go to your office and tell them, "Hey, I seen the doctor today, and this is what they said." Right? You may tell close friends or family members if it's something that you need support in, but you typically don't tell people that you went to the doctor. You just go. And the same thing is with mental health. You just go see the therapist. You can call the therapist whatever you want. You don't have to say, "I went to therapy." You can say, "I went to go get a check-in," or "I went to go, increase my healing," or "I went to go self-care," right? You can call it whatever you like. You don't have to say, "I went to see a therapist," right? There's so much stigma around mental health that you can define it however you like. But if it's going to help you heal and help you grow and help you mature in yourself and be your authentic 100% self, because you don't have all the other junk that's attacking you and all of the other traumas that you've experienced in life, if you can get rid of those things and let those things be free, you can be your 100% authentic self.
Yeah. And I know one thing we've talked about also, talking about stigmas and mental health, is the stigmas around being in the Black community, and when it comes to a therapist, or when it comes to saying that you need help for your mental health, and how that is looked at in such differently in the Black community. And us being two Black women talking about this, why do you think that is? We step away from wanting to get any of that help. Why do you think that is?
A lot of that is rooted in our generations, in our past generations, and the experiences that people in our past generations have experienced. Mental health hasn't always been a positive aspect, and it hasn't always created a positive, welcoming environment for people of color. There's been a lot of tax on people who have mental health challenges. There's been a lot of dismissal, people who have ADHD or who have bipolar or schizophrenia, it's a lot of dismissal, and they're not they don't have a mental health crisis. They're just, acting out, or they're just this, right? And that's not coming from our own people in our community. That's coming from outside communities that have created this impression that people of color don't have mental health concerns, don't have mental health issues, don't have mental health diagnoses, right? They're just behaving in a way that's not appropriate, right? They're just savaging, or they're just, people who don't have any class or anything like that. They're just crazy people, right? And so that stigma has mauled over the idea of mental health, right? So that's where a lot of that, it's for people who are crazy. It's for people who are off their meds. It's for people who don't, who can't get themselves together or can't handle their situations, right? And that comes from that place. And also there's been a lot of experiments that have been on people of color around the mental health world, doing experiments and testing medications for so that white people can utilize them, right? Or so that other people of other cultures can utilize them, and not so that the people of color or the mental health, the African American community can use them, but so that it can be used for other people, right? Because there's still that dismissal. And so there's still a lot of fear around what mental health means, what it looks like. Am I going to be looked at as a person that can't handle life? Am I going to be committed? Am I going to be all of these different things that come with it? And I always focus on perception, right? Because I want to change the perception around it, right? As opposed to minimize the stigma, because the stigma is always going to be present. But I can change your perspective about why it's important, right? Because as people of color and African Americans specifically, we are re-traumatized all the time. We are traumatized by one thing and then re-traumatized by it. It just, in the latest, there's been all these kids of color that are coming up missing. All of these kids that are being kidnapped or being, or going places and nobody knows where they are, right? And it's just circling and circling, right? It's just circling back to what was happening 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And so now it's circling back around. Or all of the pictures and views that we're seeing of people getting killed or people getting harassed, right? All of that is trauma. And all of that is stuff that we're constantly seeing. And so mental health is a very important aspect. But it does make a difference in who is providing that care, right? If I'm sitting in front of a 20-year-old white female who doesn't understand what it's like to be in their 30s or 40s with kids and a person of color, they're not going to be able to support me in the same way that another person of color would be able to support me, or even a woman that is of experience, right? And so I think that there's a lot of that fear too. Like, I'm going to be judged. I'm not going, they're going to say that I need more support than I actually need. What if they want to commit me? What if, and there's all of those aspects of the mental health field that really frightens or puts a halt on the decision to go into mental health, right? And so now that it's being more exposed and there's being more of an understanding, and there are more people are seeing of color in mental health, I think it's opening that window, but there's still that fear, right? Yeah. I mean, when you think about just going, right? When you think about looking for a therapist, it's a fear like this person's going to judge me immediately, right? This person has no idea. They're not going to know, how my situation is. They're not going to understand. Am I going to be trying to justify my situation so that they, I get their approval? Like, all of those things happen. And those things happen in everyday normal life. But when you think about exposing your vulnerabilities, it really is a piece that you want to be able to find the right person and know that that person is going to support you in exposing yourself, in learning about yourself, in changing your perspective. And so perspective is a huge one for me. I think about just the perspective of what mental health is, of why you're doing it, right? And making sure that you're doing it because it's something that you need, it's something that you know that you want and you need. Because if you're doing it because someone else told you that it's a good idea, it's not going to stick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love how you said that, you're focusing less on the stigma and more on the perception of it. And how do we change that? Because it's true, there's so many layers to it. But even just back to being re-traumatized and trauma, how would you define trauma? How do you define that? And then how do you define the re-trauma of that?
So trauma is an exposure to something that is foreign to you. And it creates a different chemical balance in your body, right? So trauma can be a simple thing. It doesn't have to be, when we think about traumas, oftentimes we think about assault on people, or we think about huge car accidents, right? But if you think about, you were at the stoplight getting ready to go and somebody's car, somebody ran through the stoplight, right? And you're like, oh my God, right? And your life flashed before your eyes. That's a trauma. That's a trauma because it has halted something in you, right? So the next time you go to a stoplight, you're going to be a lot more cautious, right? You're going to think about that last experience. That's trauma. And that's what trauma looks like. And when you have those built up, right, you get anxiety, you get depression, you get these panic attacks, you get these super vigilant, hyper vigilant behavior, right? Like where you're constantly looking around and hoping that something doesn't happen to you. Or you start thinking about, as my husband always says, you awfulize, right? So you start thinking about everything as being horrible. Everything is going to be bad, and right? That's trauma. And that's just the result of your trauma, right? And they have piled up on top of each other. And so when you are traumatized already, and then you go like everyday life, right? Like that's a trauma. That's an everyday life trauma. Well, that's probably going to happen to you again, which is going to re-traumatize you, right? Or you're going to see somebody get into an accident, right? Which triggers you back to that trauma that you experienced, which is now re-traumatizing you. Now, all of those old things that were happening are coming back up, right? Your body is tensing again. Your body is uncertain, right? Because your body never forgets what happened to it.
Yeah.
From the time you were born, from the time you came out of the womb and the process through the birth canal, your body never forgets. And so I have told people, like, when you were born, asking what the birth story was when you were born is so important and so therapeutic for your journey in life. Because there are certain experiences that you had when you were born that you recycle when it's your birthday, or when it's when you have a birth, right? All of those things recycle in your own body. And so how you responded, right? So if it was traumatic and you had to be rushed to the emergency room, your mom had to be rushed to the emergency room to deliver you, right? And they had to pull you out of right? All of that is going to happen to you in your body. If it's not healed out, it's going to happen to you in your body when your birthday comes, or when you have a certain birth experience, right? So all of those things happen to our bodies because our body doesn't forget. Our body remembers things. It remembers everything, really, that happens to it, whatever. And it also remembers, and I think this is key, it also remembers the emotional attachment to something. So if a word is said to you and you had an emotional, physical response to that word, whenever that word is said, your body will physically respond. If there's certain words that were said while you were experiencing that, your body is going to remember that if that word is said. If the word stupid is said, when you're getting, across the face, your body is going to remember if somebody said stupid and will tense.
Yeah.
Or will, move or will halt, right? Because your body is responding to not just the actual physical experience, but also the emotional and words that are attached to whatever experience you had.
Wow. It speaks to like you said, something that's happened to them. If it happens again, your body remembered those emotions, but how do you react the second time to that? Because of how it made you feel the first time. It explains people. It explains sometimes even like being in the work world and, you working with somebody and they're known as a difficult person to work with. And sometimes it could be because of something that's happened in their life that you have absolutely no clue has gone on.
Yeah, or is going on.
Or is going on.
Yep,
Very
because
true.
there are many people who go to work every day and they go home and they're physically, sexually, mentally, emotionally, financially abused. And they go home and they experience that. And then they come to work and their boss is yelling at them. Or somebody sneaks up behind them and they go, oh my God, right? That is the body's response. That's the body's natural response to whatever experiences you are having. And so I'm always cautious about what I'm saying to somebody, about what I'm doing, about the movement of my hands, about getting permission to touch somebody. All of those things are so important because I've watched people come up and just tap somebody on the shoulder or rub their shoulder. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't know if that person wants you to touch them. You don't know if that person wants you to put your hands on them. You don't know what they may be experiencing. You don't know their stigma around somebody touching them, right? They may have been touched inappropriately, and you touching them does it not create a safe environment for them. And so being aware of what my body is doing and how I would feel if my body had been treated a certain way. Would I want that treatment from somebody else? Would I want, even in an innocent situation, would I want that person to touch me?
Yeah.
And if it's no, then I'm not going to touch somebody else.
And being in the South, like, you know, we're huggers and we're more touchy. Like, you know, when you see somebody, you want to hug them. But like you said, you don't know. You have no clue if maybe that is a trigger for somebody of just being touched and the body's reaction to that.
Yeah, so I'm always like, can I give you a hug? Yeah. How are you doing? You know, do you mind if I hug you or want to shake my hand?
Just be more aware.
Kind of yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The awareness of it.
Yeah.
You explained that where I feel like a light bulb went off for me. It explained so well of just as people in this world, we've all been through things in life, but
absolutely.
It's just learning how to be aware of that other person. And what they've been going through.
Grace, you know, lending grace, lending mercy to people, lending grace to them, being able to put yourself in their shoes. You may not be experiencing the same thing that they're experiencing, but if you can think about some traumas you've had or some difficult situations in life you've experienced and think maybe that person is having a really hard time right now, or maybe something has triggered them and they don't know how to respond. And that happens more often than we think. You know, the person that blows up at the grocery store, you know, at the cashier at the grocery store, and you're thinking, why are you yelling at that person? Yeah. But something may have triggered them, and they may not even know or be aware. They may be having an out-of-body experience and not be aware that they're even going off on that person, because then they can walk away from that person and say something pleasant to you, and you're thinking, like, what just happened here, right? Like, you were just going off with that person. Yeah. But it was a trigger. There's something that triggered them. And a lot of people are walking around unhealed. And a lot of people are walking around with triggers and not even aware that they're triggers.
That's what to say. Words that are said. Everybody's aware. Yeah.
Yep. Words that they say or things that are done or a movement, even a hand gesture. You know, even a movement of your hand in some way can trigger somebody to respond.
And like you said, people ignore those traumas. You see that a lot or downplay them.
Yep.
And you spoke a little bit to this, but like, what are the consequences to that if you ignore that or downplay the trauma and the triggers and you don't get the healing you need? Like, kind of where do people go from there?
It definitely impacts all aspects of your life. You begin to bleed that, like I was saying earlier, you begin to bleed that into every aspect of your life. The simplest, you know, I can't keep a job. I can't keep a relationship. I have trouble with disciplining my children. My family, you know, is out of control. I don't feel like doing anything or going anywhere. My self-care is not as important. You know, sometimes the first things to go are like teeth brushing your teeth, which is
I've heard that.
Yes, it's because it's the last thing that you do before you complete your morning routine. Right? So if you're doing your morning routine, most people don't get up first and brush their teeth. They wash their face. They may take a shower. They may do all that. And before they leave out the door or before they get downstairs or whatever, you know, they'll brush their teeth. Right? it's always the first thing to go. After that comes like the maintenance of everything, right? So keeping your hair in line, keeping your nails in line, keeping your face washed and cleaned, right? That becomes, and if you wear makeup, you stop, you kind of limit the amount of makeup you're wearing, or you minimize the things that you put on your face, right? And then showering comes next, right? And before you know it, you're not wanting to go anywhere, do anything, get out of the bed, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the different steps and stages that happen, as well as your family friendships or relationships start to suffer, right? Like you start to not wanting to hang out with them, or you start to be short with your family members or your friends, right? Like they ask you something and you don't really want to talk about it, or you don't really want to have any conversations with them about that, right? Mm-hmm. Or you do talk to them about it, but you don't really see any positive responses from it, right? So those are the kind of things, or that's all you can talk about, right? Like that trauma is all you can talk about.
Yeah.
At work, you stop performing like you were performing before. And that happens slowly over time, right? Because a lot of people put a lot of focus on work because they need the funds to be able to manage their lifestyle. So they will put a lot of focus on work, right? But work performance starts to diminish. You also start to showing up a little later, right? Mm-hmm. You may be on time. You may be 15 minutes early, right? Then it goes down to 10 minutes early. Next thing you know, you're just there right at 9:00, right? Or 8:00 or whatever time you start your day. And then next thing you know, you're getting there at 8:05, right? And, people are saying, why are you late? And blah, blah, blah. And then you say, don't worry about it. I'm here, right? That kind of thing. And it slowly starts to integrate into all aspects of your life because that trauma is not healed, right? And it's a simple trauma, right? Oftentimes, there are a lot of people that it's huge traumas, but oftentimes the everyday person is dealing with a small trauma that builds over time. So it's one small trauma that they put another trauma on top of and another trauma on top of till your mountain is so high that you can't handle it.
Yeah, and now it's too much to bear.
And now everything is affected by that.
Wow.
Because that first trauma was not addressed. And that's what therapy helps you do. Pull off the layers of those traumas that you experienced, right?
Yep.
That you may think as insignificant.
Yeah.
But they impacted you. 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of the same thing happening, 1, 2 or 3, 4, 5 different things happening, all impact you mentally. And they change your perspective of things. They change your emotional connection to things. They change your spiritual connection to things, because our spirit, our body, our mind are all connected. And the minute one gets out of whack, your emotions start falling in line, right? Yeah. So your emotions take over to warrant the physical, mental, or spiritual aspect of your life. So anytime you have an emotional experience, right, that's out of the norm, right? There are people who are criers. There are people who are, excited. There are people who get nervous. That's just, some of those are human nature, natural human responses. But when you get overly nervous, or you're crying about everything, or you're angry about everything, right? Or you're excited, anxiously excited about everything, then you have to really look at what in my life is not aligned, because my emotions are coming into that space and filling that space so that there's an alignment.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, was what are the emotional triggers of trauma that's unhealed? But like you said, anxiety is such a big thing right now. There's that cartoon movie, I can't even think of the name of it, that came out, and one of the characters is anxiety.
Oh, Inside Out?
Inside Out, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember people resonating with that character so much. And I've heard, I don't know the statistics, but I've heard that a lot of people have anxiety. My question from there would be like, how do people first off know they have anxiety? Because it's such a huge emotion. And like you said, one that does come from trauma as well as mental health. How can people see the signs of having anxiety? And what can they do to heal from that?
Oftentimes people are anxious because I was just telling somebody this the other day, they're holding on to something from their past while they have an expectation for their future. And so when you are holding on to your past, right? And then you're still trying to expect that you're going to get this thing in the future. You're trying to pull your past with you, right?
Wow.
And then you're also trying to pull your future with you. So then you're doing a tug of war, right? Which is causing you to be anxious in your body because you don't know what's going to happen. I know what did happen, right? And I know I don't want that to happen, right? So I'm going to keep remembering that happened, right? That's the holding on, right? But this is what I expect to happen. But I can't have that if I keep on thinking about what was happening. So you have this anxiety, which is this hyper tensity in your body, right? And it shows up in different aspects where you're nervous about what's going to happen. I'm nervous about what they're going to say. I'm nervous about what they're going to do. I'm very aware of and very concerned with how they view me. I'm very concerned with what's going to happen if this happens next, right? That's anxiety. And anxiety is actually a very normal thing, right? But the thing that happens is when you hyper focus, right? You focus so deeply on that thing. So if it's you're getting a new job and you're nervous about the new job, right? Nervousness is normal, right? Being anxious about what's to come for that new job. But when you get into the position and you start doing the job and you're doing it well, then you're nervous about whether or not they're going to keep you there. Then you're nervous about whether or not you're going to get let go, right? Somewhere in your life, you have experienced a level of rejection or a level of denial or a level of minimizing that has created now this anxiety about them minimizing you, about them not seeing your true worth or value, right? And that comes from a trauma that you experienced that you may not even be aware of. Or you may not even recognize that was a trauma, right? You know, you lost a job or you got, you didn't perform well at your last job. So now you're like, oh, I got to perform really well, right? So you hyper focus on that. And then if they say something to you, for your, you're in the first week or first or second week of the job, right? You don't know everything and you're not doing everything right? Every job and every person is not going to do it right the first couple of weeks, right? But people expect to. And when they get a review, when the person tells them, makes correction, right? Like they give them a correction
performance
to do
improvement.
The job, right? To do the job better. All of a sudden, they're like, I can never do this job, right?
Yeah.
And now they're nervous about whether they're going to be able to do the job. And so then they go to the job and they're tensed, right?
Yeah.
They're tensed. They're focused on doing their job, right? They're not interacting with their coworkers, which is just as important as doing your job successfully, right? They're listening to and hanging on to every word that the supervisor is saying. And if the supervisor immediately, before the supervisor can finish their sentence, they're at their computer trying to fix whatever that problem was, right? That's anxiety. And that's what it looks like. And that's normal, right? It's when it takes over that it becomes abnormal. And that's when you need to seek help. But so many people equate every experience that they have in their life to having anxiety. And there's a huge difference. True anxiety halts you from being able to live in your authentic self. Any mental health diagnoses alters you. When you need mental health services is when it alters you from being able to live in your authentic and true self. If it changes how you are operating in life, everyday life, then you need mental health services. If it's something that is norm, right? Because we get down, right?
Yeah.
But the minute somebody gets down, then they're thinking, oh, I have depression, right?
Yeah.
And now you're putting that on you. And now eventually you're going to have that because you keep saying it. You keep putting it on you. You keep equating everything to that, right? It's when your life alters because of whatever that is. It changes your chemical DNA or it changes your ability to function in everyday life. And that is when you need mental health services.
Wow. Yeah. And I think from everything we've talked about it from the perspective of that person dealing with that. So that person dealing with the mental health or the anxiety or the trauma, re-trauma. But now I kind of want to change gears and talk about it from the person, like a loved one that maybe is in the household with somebody. What would you say to that person? Like, where do they start to recognize it, or I don't know. I don't know if they help. I don't, you tell me, like, where do they start? Because it's got to be just as frustrating for your loved ones to see their person going through this and not knowing how to help. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things I tell people when they're a loved one of someone who's dealing with mental health is that they normalize the mental health, right? Because when we make it something that's abnormal, people reject it, right? People don't want to be a part of that. People don't want to experience that, don't want to feel that, right? Which only makes the person who's experiencing the mental health crises or needing the mental health support, it only makes them feel worse, right?
Yeah, like feel like an outcast. Yeah.
Right. Or when you minimize it. Right. So when I say support, I mean, be present with that person. So if they're having an anxiety attack, claim it, name it, and allow them to claim it. Right. You're having a panic attack. You're having an anxiety attack. You are in a depressive state. Right. What would you need from me to help you and to support you, as opposed to saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to fix this, you need this, you need
come
that.
From that
right?
side. Yeah.
Right. And everybody, typically we do that, right? Because we want that person to be better. And we're not doing it from a place of judgment.
Exactly.
But that person feels judged.
Yeah.
And so when you are supporting them, instead of saying what they need to do or what they should be doing, ask them what they would like for you to do. What would you like me to do to help you? How would you like me to support you? Do you need a break from something? Do you need me to provide you with something? Is there someone I can call to support you in this? Am I the right support? If I'm not the right support, can I find someone who might be a better support?
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm wanting your safety. I'm wanting your healing. I'm wanting for you to be better. And what do I need to do to help you be better? Because I don't want you to be in this position. So coming from a place of care, concern, and love allows for you to connect to that supportive part of them. And they will, not always, but most of the time, they will let that guard down a little bit to allow for you to help them see that there's something that they need to change.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I mean, I've done it. I can count on my hands how many times I've been like, I care about you so much. This is what I see that you need to do. And, you know, you start listing it off, but like you said, it makes it look like it's a place of judgment for that person. Instead of asking them, what do you need from me? How can I support you in this?
Being authentic about your own personal experience, right? So if you have experienced mental health, or you have gone and seen a therapist, or you have been in a depressive state or in an anxious mode, you know, speaking about that helps that person feel like they're not alone, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're wanting somebody to heal from something, or you feel like they want to heal, right? And you recognize that they want to heal, you being authentic about your own personal experiences or journey, right? I've told clients before, like, I know it because I did it. Right? I'm not telling you this because I'm coming from a book. I'm not telling you this because I'm coming from a place where I've never experienced or I don't know what I'm talking about. I did it. I did that thing, and this is what I did to help me, or this is how I, worked through and processed through that. So you can too. It helps them feel like they're not alone. It helps them feel like they can heal from whatever this is.
And speaking to like that person's healing journey that's going through that, where would you tell somebody to start? Like, say there's somebody that battling some mental health issue, depression, anxiety, something out there like that. Where do you tell them to start?
First place is to recognize that you have it, right?
Yeah.
Recognize that you are depressed. Recognize that you are anxious. Recognize that you may have a chemical imbalance, or you may have an addiction, or you may be struggling with this thing, right? Struggling with just life in general, right? Recognizing that is the first step, because if you can't recognize it, you can see as many therapists as you want to. If you don't recognize it, you're not going to be able to heal it.
Yeah.
So recognizing that it's there, it's present, right? Beginning to then seek out what help you need, right? Because it may not be help in the line of a therapist. It might not be help in a line of medication. But if it is, right, seeking out all avenues and all aspects of what your mental health would look like, right? What do you want? What do you have now? And what do you want?
Yeah.
And then you begin to work through how you can get what you want, right? So if you want healing from being anxious or having anxiety, or you want to be able to manage your anxiety, right? Or you want to be able to be less depressed, right? Because it's not a cure, right? Like you don't just come out of that, right? But you can be less depressed, or you can gain skills and tools that will help you when you do feel depressed, right? So that it's not something that you are in for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so seeking out what things you want next, what things do you want, and how can I get them? Do I need to see a therapist? Do I need to provide more self-care for myself? Do I need to be exposing myself to more nature? What things do I need to exercise more? Do I need to change my eating habits? Is my eating connected to my emotional experiences? Is my lack of sunlight or lack of experience outside hindering me from being able to connect to my emotional side or being able to feel joy and excitement? Like, what things are happening for you? And when you do other things, do those things change? Right? Am I needing more time with my friends? Am I needing to be more dedicated to that? Do I need to forgive somebody? Do I need to apologize to somebody? What things do I need to do? Right? And then if therapy is the next step, because you realize that it's deeper than just those things, right? Then you seek out, what kind of therapist do you want to have? Do I want a therapist that focuses on cognitive and behavioral? Do I want a therapist that focuses on doing things more than talking about them? Do I want to focus on a therapist who is focused on addiction? Maybe I have an addiction to something. Is there a therapist that's available for that? Do I want a therapist that's a man or a woman? Right? You just go through the different steps and stages of each aspect of your life and be authentic and be real and have somebody who's there, either has experienced it or can support you in going through the steps and the stages. Because there may come a point where you like, this is crazy. I'm done. I'm just, like, I don't want to deal with this healing stuff no more. I'm done. Right? Like, I was okay and I was fine being whoever, right? It's like cleaning out your closet, right? You get to that middle step where you cleaned out all that stuff and you're like, this is it. I'm not doing none of this. Shove all this stuff back in that closet because the space was clean. Right, exactly. The space was clean before I started digging all this stuff out, right?
Yep,
and so you just want to shove it back in there, right? So you have to have somebody who can support you and say, no, keep moving, keep going. You'll get there, right? It'll all be cleared out, right? Like you'll get rid of the stuff, the junk that's not supposed to be there, or you'll get rid of the old shoes that you haven't worn in years that you don't need, right? Throw them out, right? But you have to be able to have somebody who can support you in that. And that is the step that many people get to, and then they stop. And then they never get to the other side because it's too painful. It's too painful. Yeah. It's very painful opening up wounds. It's very painful opening up things and experiences that you've had in the past. It is very painful. I'm not going to tell anybody that it's easy, right?
Yeah.
But it is worth it, because on the other side, you discover who you really are. Who you are past all those things that you experienced. Who you are that those things that you experienced created. Yeah. Right? Those things created and forged this person who's strong, this person who's resilient, this person who's determined, right? And if you quit just before that happens, you don't get to feel that. Yep. You don't get to experience that. And it is beautiful to experience that, to be able to live in your authentic, true self and not be judged, not feel judgment from other people, even though other people may judge you. You don't feel it. Or not feeling, that you're not adequate enough, or not feeling that you're not enough for someone, right? Or enough to be loved, right? When you get to that place, it is beautiful. And many people don't get there.
Yeah. You get to
find you. Many people don't get there because they stop. Yeah.
What would you say? I mean, they even made me think of people that are older that may feel like it's too late for them. What do you say
to those?
It's never
too late.
People? Yeah.
It's never too late. As long as you have breath in your body, as long as you have limbs, and even if you don't have all your limbs, as long as you have breath in your body and you understand that is a process that you need to go through, it is never too late. You can always do it. I've worked with people who are in their 80s. I've worked with people who are from 5 to 88. I've worked with. I believe that people can find and discover who they are at whatever stage and whatever age of their life. It never stops. Healing process never stops. You never get 100% healed, right? But you can discover who you are, and you can live in that authentic self at any age and at any stage of your life. It doesn't have to be in your 40s to 50s. It doesn't have to be in your 20s to 60s. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be. It can be at any age and any stage of your life. Discovering who you are is a constant journey. And when you get to a place where you are confident in who you are, then all that other stuff doesn't even matter. But any
that's
age,
so beautiful. That's so beautiful because it's just so true. I feel like from what I've taken away from this is one thing, because I've taken a lot away, but one thing is having a therapist helps you get to that point where you are authentically you. And that's really what a therapist is helping you do. Yeah. Is find you. Yeah. Peel back all the layers, heal all the trauma, and get back to who you are. Yeah. Wow. I love that. And just to close it out, this has been such a great discussion. I want to end, and I always love to end with just like a hopeful message for somebody that may be listening to this episode that just needs a little boost of encouragement to maybe take that first step. And maybe they've been thinking about seeking out a therapist. What would you tell somebody, that's listening to this episode that may be in that position? Just do it. Do it and be your true self. When you think about the first time you went to get your nails done, right? I mean, you might have been a little kid or you might have been whatever. You were nervous. This person is about to be touching my hands. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if it's going to turn out right? Just do it. And you went in there, you did it, and you enjoyed it, right? You enjoyed it so much, maybe you went back again, right? You kept going. You kept doing it, right? And the same thing is with therapy. You do it. Do it if you need it, if you feel like you need it, if you've been wondering about it, if you've been thinking about it or consulting yourself about it, do it, right? And if that first therapist doesn't work, find another one. Don't give up on the journey because that therapist wasn't right. Keep doing it. Keep moving. Keep going forward, because on the other side of that is your victory. Whatever your victory looks like, on the other side of that is your victory. And even just making the call, on the other side of making that call is your victory. You might unlock something that you didn't know was there just by doing that, right? Yeah. And so I say do it. Do it. Whatever it is that you're needing, whatever it is that you're seeking out, do it. Wow. Thank you so much. This is, I think, such a powerful episode, and just one that it helps everybody. We've all been through something in our life, and this really helps to kind of open our eyes up to maybe something we've been through, or maybe something a loved one has been through, and we just kind of need to see that perspective a little bit clearer. So thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Life We're Given. If it inspired you, share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you are notified about future episodes. Until next time. Oh, and keep showing up for you. You deserve it.